A good Erev Shabbos, everyone. Erev Shabbos, Parshas, Behar, B'chukoisai, Shabbos Chazak. Let's jump right into the Parsha and discuss the two questions we're going to have in this week's Parsha. And Parshas Behar we're going to focus on. We know Parshas Behar begins with the laws of Shemitah and Yovel. That's every 7 years. Eretz Yisrael, which is an agricultural society, must take a break. Everyone gets a sabbatical, no parnasa. For that year, you can't work your fields. When there's a Yovel, when the Jubilee year is there, it's every 50 years. That's 2 years in a row. You have Shemitah. And then you have Yovel, where there's no working the field, and a person's forced to look up to Shemayim and have bitachon. Hashem will take care of it. So at the end of the second Aliyah, when Behar is by itself, the end of the first Aliyah, when they're together, in Parak Chafei Pasuk and Ches, the Pasuk reads as follows. And here will come our questions. V'asisim es chukoisai, you will perform my statutes, my chukim. Yes, mishpatai tishmeru, and you will guard my mishpatim. V'asisim oisam, so you will be oise, you will do my chukim, and you will guard my mishpatim. Pasuk finishes off, v'yishavtem ala aretz levetach. What's the reward for doing my chukim, for performing my chukim, and for guarding my mishpatim? You will sit in the land levetach with security. Two questions. Number one, the Netziv points out of Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, his epic, monumentous work on the Parsha on Chumash called the Hemek Dover. He says that normally we find Shmira or Halicha by Chukim. Normally it says Ushmartim es Chukoisa. What's Vasisim es Chukoisa? What are Chukim? And why the lashon of Asiya of performing? Normally we find Shmira, guarding, or Halicha, the same like Seilechu. You shouldn't walk in their statutes. What's the lashon of Asiyah? Secondly, and this Ha'ara of Hirsch points out, at the end of the pasuk, it says V'yishaftim, the reward for keeping Shemitah and Yovel, V'yishaftim al aretz lov vetach. You will dwell in the land with security. So it should have just said, grammatically, it should have really just said Betach. V'yishaftim al aretz betach. You will dwell in the land with security. What's lov vetach? You will dwell in the land for security, to security. What does that mean? Zoktin Netziv. He says, whenever chukim comes before mishpat, whenever the word chayk comes before mishpat, as he said many times, chukim referred to creating general principles and concepts in the Torah through which we can understand, explain the Torah. Those are chukim. For example, we have the Yud Gimel Midos of Rabbi Yishmael that we say every morning before Moshe and Shacharis. Sha'at Torah nidreshes bahem. Those are 13 guiding principles that Rabbi Yishmael was able to figure out based on his knowledge of Torah. These are 13 guiding principles how we understand the Torah. And then Netziv points out that originally there were 7, then another 6 were added to 13. He quotes from Tosefta and Sanhedrin that they added klalim. That's one chelik of Talmud Torah. There's another part of Talmud Torah called Misbottom, which is taking the chukim, taking these concepts, these principles, and analyzing the Torah through the lens of these principles and coming up with halacha l'maisa, with a different understanding of the Torah. Says that Netziv, mishpatim are easier. It's easier to do mishpatim because I have the principles, I apply it to the Torah, and I have my bottom line. What's harder is to understand the Torah to the point, to the extent where I can come up with new chukim, with new principles to guide myself through the Torah. Zok Netziv, it's precisely now, during the year of Shemitah, during the year of Yovel, where the Yid is taking off. No one's working, all the borders, people patrolling the border go back home to their cities, to their towns. The farmers are sitting in the Beis Medrash. This is the year, or the 2 years of sabbatical, where the Yid can plumb the depths of Torah. He can go into the deep recesses of the Torah and come up with chidushim, come up with general principles that guide the Torah. So the Torah is telling us, V'asisim es chukoisa. Asiya means create chukim. Now that you have more time during Shemitah Yovel, it's not the time to focus on the mishpatim, on the already given principles and applying them to the Torah. This is the time to focus on the chukim, v'asisem es chukoiseh. Create more principles through which the Torah is governed. The reward is going to be you get to dwell in the land with security. Says the Netziv, Hu hatan v'asiba mashenidush b'shnei yovel lahagdil Torah. This is the reason why the Torah is telling us to up our game, so to speak, in Talmud Torah during Shemitah. The Shmira Sa'aretz ve'umas ha'olam hu al yedei anshe chal yoshim al asapar. Normally, how do we protect the country? By having strong borders. But during Yovel, the soldiers are not with their weapons armed by the border. Everyone's going back home. Everyone's going back to their natural place of inheritance, their land of inheritance. So naturally, the danger in security. It's a security threat throughout the year of Shemitah and Yovel. So, Shainis, the second issue is, for Shmiras Haaretz, you have to have the king's oitzris, his treasure house has to be full. You have to have a lot of money to support all the troops. Now we have 2 years of much less money coming because no one's doing any work. Therefore, the country's in a big danger. Therefore, the Torah warns us, before my chukim, upilpula shel Torah, hicharbam shel Yisrael. The deep analyzing of the Torah, the Talmud Torah, be'iyun, in depth, that is the charbam shel Yisrael. That is the sword of Yisrael. Moshe shmiras hamedina, and that's what protects the country. The more danger a person is in, the more dangerous the war, the more one has to sharpen his sword. So that's the Yesod. Shemitah, the way we keep ourselves safe during Shemitah is by sharpening the sword and learning Torah B'Iyan in depth. Rav Hirsch, commenting on the second question we had, why does it say V'yishavtem ha'aretz levetach? Why it should have been V'yishavtem ha'aretz betach? You will dwell in the land with security. Zok Netziv, this is the English version of Zok Rav Hirsch, the English version of his Pirush on his commentary on the Torah. He says the formulation is not betach, but rather levetach. It's levetach. The yeshiva itself, the way in which we dwell in the land, will be levetach, will be what guarantees us security. V'yishavtem ala aretz, the way you dwell in the land, keeping Shemitah, keeping Yovel, learning Torah, levetach is for the purpose, for the goal of security. Not that Hashem is saying that I'm going to reward you with security, which is true, but it's the actual yeshiva ba'aretz. The yeshavtem ala aretz, the way you dwell in the land, levetach will be your security. That's going to cause your security. So both the Netziv and Rav Hirsch are saying the same idea. And this is the idea of Shemitah and Yovel. The Shemitah is coming up, Tavshin Pei Beis, Be'ez Hashem, B'Shah Toivel Mitzlachas, is the next Shemitah. And the idea is that our security, our real security, is our Talmud Torah. Our real security is our emunah and bitachon in Kadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem says, take a year off, I'm going to take a year off, and I'm going to have the same confidence in my parnasa that I'll have even if I'm not taking the year off. That's the lesson of Shemitah. That's the lesson of this pasuk. That's why we have to realize there are certain times that are more opportune for Torah. During those times, it's vasisem es chukoisai. We have to up our game in Talmud Torah. We have to make sure we're learning Torah B'iyum with the proper depth. And we have to realize that it's v'yishavtem al aretz love that tach. It's b'schus our kiyum Torah and mitzvahs that we will be able to live securely. Wishing everyone a wonderful Shabbos.